me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
Location is really critical, and so am I in a park? Am I in a street? Am I in an urban area? Am I in a reforestation area? So I've done like restoration plantings. So I worked on a project. Led the tree planting for 30,000 seedlings. We had nurseries, and we established seedlings along it's called the Mission Reach Ecosystem Restoration Project.
Welcome back to the Daily Parks and Rec Show, where we explore the heartbeat of vibrant communities and the essential work that makes them thrive. Today, we're diving into a key area of facilities maintenance, urban forestry. We're joined by Justin Krobot, a board-certified master arborist and operations manager, who's here to break down the importance of managing trees within our parks and communities. Urban forestry goes far beyond just planting trees. It's about the careful management and care of each tree in the park system. Justin will walk us through vital topics like tree inventory, pruning, watering, and the challenges of managing urban forests. We'll also touch on urban heat islands, tree canopy management, and how to ensure a sustainable and healthy tree population. Whether it's maintaining lush landscapes or implementing fire prevention strategies, this episode gives you an in-depth look at the expertise required to preserve and enhance our green spaces. Tune in and discover the art and science of urban forestry.
From South Texas, we don't start on time. We start when we start. You know what I mean?
That's
we
right.
get there when we get there.
All right, we are live. We've got a special show for you today. I've got Justin. Justin, how do you pronounce your last name?
Justin Krobot.
Krobot. I got it right. So he is how do you define yourself? Tree specialist? Which title are we going with nowadays?
Oh, that's great. I'm a board-certified master arborist for the company I work for. I'm an operations manager and what we call a market leader. So I manage our market and then our operations for our team across the state of Texas.
All right, so Justin. So as we did yesterday, I did a deep dive into all things Parks and Rec. Facilities maintenance, and trying to fish out and describe every category that could possibly be thrown on the maintenance side of Parks and Rec. Urban forestry is one of those titles, and now we're discovering that there is a newer, more appropriate title called community forestry. But let me get your title one last time. It's board certified?
Board certified master arborist. That's our certification, is the credential that I hold.
Master arborist.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, so what's under master?
So when you become, there's kind of a level, I guess you could say, maybe a hierarchy of credentials within the arboriculture community. So you're a certified arborist, and then you have to get a certain number of points and years of experience, and it helps if you have a degree and all those other things. But basically, once you either have about 10 years of experience, you can qualify to become a board certified master arborist. And so they have a exam and a process in order to qualify for that. So got that in 2021 and have been certified since 2012.
So at least 10 years of experience plus the test.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And where can you take this test? Anywhere in America?
It's online these days. So you can International Society of Arboriculture. So if you want to become certified, we actually hold a prep course here in San Antonio. So I'm one of the instructors, and they break down each chapter on, hey, here's what the book teaches you that you need to learn, and then here's how to actually what you need to know for the test, but also practical knowledge. And it's basically, we call that the Healthy Trees and Certified Arborist Prep Course. And we actually have one in all cities. There's one in Austin, Dallas, and we just started it in Houston. And there's actually one been in El Paso recently. If you know geography of Texas, not a lot of trees out there, but there are a huge push to have more and more educated folks in the care of trees throughout our state.
And what was it called? Healthy Trees, and what was that last part?
An arborist prep course.
Arborist.
Yeah, shout out to San Antonio Arborist Association and ISA. So that's International Society of Arboriculture. There's a Texas chapter. So we
What
hope
was that title again? International
Society of Arboriculture. So it's ISA.
Society of, what was that last part? Arboriculture?
Arboriculture. So like ARBORICULTURE. I don't know if that's helpful. I can spell. I was like, don't give me to do math, but I could.
Look, buddy, I can barely spell my name. I misspell it all the time. International Society of Arboriculture. Was there another one? And you said there's local chapters pretty much in every major city.
So we have a Texas chapter of that International Society, and then we actually have a local nonprofit group that is basically, hey, years ago we started saying, hey, we need to improve this industry, and we have safety issues, we've got bad work that's happening out there, and this just it's to combat that, saying, hey, there's a cadre, we call ourselves a cadre, like of folks that we've joined together. So we want to educate and we want to raise the standard of professionalism with arboriculture in our community in San Antonio. And so we've been doing that.
Give me some common mistakes. Like when you say there are mistakes being made, are we talking like the wrong species is being planted and it's
absolutely, yeah. It's really a focus from that organization on commercial tree care. There's a lot of that, and just concerns, but also just education. So we do a lot of community education for homeowners. So we were doing that. Hey, we're just going to train ourselves. We're going to train that next generation. We actually have a scholarship program for urban forestry as well here in San Antonio. But hey, we'll train that next generation of arborists. But also, we said, hey, there's homeowners, there's landscape architects, there's people that work with trees. It's not just arborists. So we opened that up to homeowners and other community folks in San Antonio. So, how you doing, Jason?
Doing well. How about yourself?
You know me. I'm just talking about trees. So that's how we do it.
Jason, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So we've got two people that are official. I think we could call y'all official tree huggers at this. I mean, when you got an arborist license, you have to, I think, take a picture with a tree. I was actually telling Justin, I was like, I know that tree behind you.
That's it.
That is the angel oak. I've been fan of that tree for probably 2 decades. That's in Charlotte, right? Is that?
Yeah. I think it's closer to like Charleston area, South Carolina.
Yes, I think you're right.
But I don't know. Don't get me on my Carolinas geography. I'm from Texas, so I had a trip planned where we were going to do Charleston visit, but COVID killed it, and I've had 2 kids since then. So maybe someday. I've always wanted to go visit. So shout out. I've heard it's beautiful out that way, but I just dream. It's like my goal one day. Maybe I'll make it out that way and see it.
Yeah.
You're gonna hug it when you see it?
If they'll let me get close, so maybe. I've hugged one tree before at least. So.
I'll distract. If you take me with you, I'll distract them, and then you can, in the chaos, you can go hug it.
There you go. Absolutely.
We'll need Jason to get it all on film, though.
Hey, let's go. You're invited.
If you're not thrown in cuffs, then you're not doing something right.
It's love, you know what I mean? You gotta love some.
You need him pepper sprayed and thrown on the ground, and then that's going to go down in history.
That's it.
Well, I'm sure some of the Parks and Rec folks know about that, right?
That's it.
All right. So this is just for the guests. This is facilities maintenance edition of Parks and Rec, the Daily Parks and Rec show. And one of the things that is one of the many things that is thrown in this department finds itself in the Parks and Rec department is the urban forestry or community forestry as a division of Parks and Rec. And so typically in a very healthy or larger system, you'll find a certified arborist, a master arborist, a couple of maybe a tree surgeon or 2, and all the equipment as just one of the things that's inside of Parks and Rec. But this, talk about a deep rabbit hole. This is not one of those things you can just fly by. This is something you can go super deep on as far as, just the terminology around, and we were talking about that. Maybe we can just start there.
Sure.
Justin, you were saying that urban forestry has this kind of thought of what it is, but we're really moving towards calling it community forestry because it's a little more appropriate. Can you maybe, you or Jason, explain the difference between those two?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So urban forestry has kind of been that traditional term, from a city standpoint. And there's been kind of a shift in that regard to look at, hey, we're focusing on trees in the urban environment, heat island, air quality, there's green space, there's shade, there's all those benefits, but looking at it at a broader scale as a community forestry. So, urban to me always has a very context of like, hey, that's downtown. There's like tall buildings and streets and street trees and things like that. And I think it's, that's broadened to look at, hey, we're managing local forest, and look at that as a holistic thing. Hey, it's not just this area, this immediate area that's like kind of a built environment. What's that larger scale that we're looking at on a community basis, and then not just, in future planning, what's forecasted, what are these parks that don't even exist yet? Where are we looking at and opportunities for those?
Jason, you got anything to add to that?
No, I mean, Justin said it pretty well, wrapped it all up, man. But I think it's really, trying to, like Justin said, to really just take a more of a holistic view, right, of each individual tree that's within the city to create that urban forest canopy.
Now, I noticed he said a term, urban heat island. Can you describe that, what that is, to people who aren't familiar with it?
Sure, absolutely.
And how trees affect that.
Oh, that's a great one. So heat island effect, we've got a lot of concrete, asphalt, buildings, air conditioners, non-natural surfaces, rooftops in an urban area. And so they, heat. So I'm not a scientist, right? Let me precursor this. I'm an arborist, not a scientist. So somebody can explain this better. But some of that would be reflected or absorbed in a natural environment that could be reflected back out in a built environment that could be absorbed and held, and so more shading equals more cooling in those type of environments. And so trees are one benefit and ways to do that. And so, some cities have really tried to say, hey, like in order to combat this, we are, trying to identify areas of street tree plantings, medians, in Houston area specifically, they call them like an esplanade or an esplanade. So it's middle of the street, right? So I can get cooling effect on both sides of the street. So preservation of trees in those areas has been a priority, but also planting, and that's one of the hardest area to get a tree established. But and so that's kind of a continuum. The harder it is to plant and maintain and establish a tree, typically says, hey, that's the most benefit that we're actually going to have for that tree. So something to consider as you plan out. Hey, we're putting streets and sidewalks and trails. It's concrete. How do we shade that and offset some of that? And it also helps the people out there, right, in the middle of South Texas and the middle of summer, July, August. You're not going to see as many people as the winter and other times. Why is that? Hey, it's 100 degrees and you go touch that pavement, you could fry an egg on it. So how do you combat that?
Well, yeah, I think the concept is that you've never you might have burnt your feet on walking on asphalt that on a hot day, but I don't think you've ever burnt your hand on a leaf. And so they just, one holds heat and one maybe absorbs it to some degree, puts it back into the plant or reflects it. And then of course you got your heat creators, which are AC units and cars that are just, they're sources of heat. And then you've got things that hold heat. And so imagine just having more trees in the urban environment, reflect it, don't hold it. You got anything to add to that, Jason?
Yeah, I was going to say that, in addition to all those benefits, one of the things that they've done research on as well is, downtown areas that have trees and tree-lined streets. People will actually spend more money in those locations. So Main Streets, for instance, that's an additional economic driver, right, to be able to help with some of those, urban heat island effect and be able to benefit off of the additional costs that people will pay just to be able to have trees around in shaded environments. So I think that's kind of unique as well.
So that trees will affect spending habits, or maybe, I know for me, if I see a house that I'm more likely to rent it or buy it if it's got a good tree canopy in and around it. It's just versus one of those subdivisions that's just brand new. It's nothing but dirt, and they have like a few little things planted that might take 20 or 30 years to do anything substantial versus an older subdivision that might have 200 or 300-year-old oak trees in it. I know that increases land value by a tremendous amount.
Absolutely. Well, people will stay at the fair longer, if they have a tree to be able to go hang out under for a while, right? So you get, it's those kinds of things to think about too. Yeah, I mean, trees can benefit you in a multitude of ways.
Hmm. Now, how about air quality? Do y'all know anything about that? I heard y'all mention it briefly, but anything more to say or elaborate on?
I mean, oxygen. That's what trees produce oxygen, and the more vegetation that you've got, I mean, that's what it's going to absorb. So that's really it from that benefit. I think that you're offset. You can go way down a rabbit hole. There's EPA attainment. You got to go get your car inspected, and they'll have to add and do additional like emissions testing and all this kind of other stuff. And that's something from a community standpoint that cities are always looking at. Like if you lose that attainment, how do you balance that? And so offsetting those, a lot of your large transportation folks have planting programs to kind of help offset stuff like that. So like I said, I'm not a scientist, I'm an arborist, but I understand the concepts. And trees. There's a saying that says trees are the answer, and they're not always the only answer. There's obviously a whole lot of but I think it's a component of that for sure.
Yeah, we have that. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
I was gonna piggyback off of that really quickly. Is Justin had mentioned DOT, your transportation. Please, Parks and Rec professionals, look at that, because TxDOT, for instance, the Texas Department of Transportation, has a green ribbon project, which will basically provide grants and funding and monies to entryways that are within cities that need to have some of those attainment goals, I guess, that Justin was mentioning.
I wanted to, Jason, what is your qualification, certification, whatever? I just wanted to write that down. And I know you.
Oh yeah,
titles and
stuff. I'm just a arborist, tree risk assessment qualified, CPRP as well.
Are you a board certified master arborist?
No, I'm gonna leave that to Justin.
All right, and then have any of y'all held any positions on any other organizations that might of note?
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I was a Parks and Rec director in various cities throughout Texas.
Oh, there you go.
And then and a Parks and Recreation superintendent as well. So yeah.
Parks and Rec.
I started at the end of a weed eater, man.
That's it. That's the best place to start. That's how to really get close to Mother Nature. You have her splattered all over your shoes.
I'm telling you.
There's a big difference between weed eating in a field on a fence line and under a tree. All right, let's see. Okay, so let's jump back to education real quick. I want to make sure that we're just at least talking about it. So a certified arborist, what counts as experience? So you had said you need 10 years of experience plus the test to become a master arborist. What do they count as experience?
That's a great question. So you can have a formal education. So if you actually have a degree in urban forestry, you can come right out of school and get certified. After that, you can get points that say, hey, I'm a certified like an urban forester or utility specialist. They have something called a municipal specialist that they've renamed to a certified urban forest professional. Every time that you get more and more of these credentials, you get more points. You can also have years of experience that'll add up to it. So if you just basically get certified, you have enough years of experience, that basically gives you enough to walk in to be able at least to qualify to take the test. If you what qualifies as experience is really kind of working with trees in an urban forest type capacity, or in planning, municipal planning review, Parks and Rec. If I'm doing maintenance and tree care, if I'm planting, really kind of anything that you could think of that you're involved in the direct care, and they will verify your credentials and say, hey, like if they have questions, the ISA will say, hey, here's a form, get that person to fill it out, and we're actually going to have somebody refer you. And I've had to do that for folks and sign off and kind of vouch for folks and say, yes, they actually did this and they're legit. Like we're actually qualified for that and not just made up. So it's good. Anything you can do, I don't know, what am I missing?
Yeah. So essentially they're looking at, for your career, what are you doing for a living? If it involves caring for trees over a decade, then that's kind of the experience they're looking for.
Absolutely. Typically. Yeah. If you're going to be board certified master arborist, and then Jason and I are both in pursuit of it. There's credentials. There's a lot in the tree care industry and in the tree world. There's a lot for forestry. There's a lot for arboriculture. And so there's kind of an important designation and differentiation there. So our arboriculture is usually more individual trees. Forestry is usually community-wide scale. Now we look at, very individual trees, but we look at, large scales as well. So in the field of arboriculture, kind of the highest level that I've been able to find is called a registered consulting arborist. And so that's really kind of the existing role that we're Jason and I are both in. I'm in San Antonio, Jason's in Houston, and we're working on pursuing that. And I think we just got approved for, we have a national convention. So me and Jason are doing a presentation in December in San Antonio at La Cantera Resort for our American Society of Consulting Arborists. And we're doing a talk on there. So this is prep for that somewhat. So we're excited about that. I'm excited about that.
So what is forestry? How is that define that term for us?
Well, Jason, you want to go? I can talk all day, man. Go ahead.
Go for it. No, you're doing just fine, man.
Let him cook.
So there, with forestry, typically you're looking in, valuation of trees, logging, land use, planting, management, and prescribed burning. There's a lot of facets of forestry, and it's usually it doesn't always focus on the human environment of that, where that interaction with humans are at. Obviously, if you're logging and using that for lumber, that's for humans, right? For new construction and development and things like that. But with arboriculture, that's usually where we're interacting with trees. Is like, we're solving tree problems, right? We're providing solutions to those, but they're really people problems. They're human problems or interactions with trees. Either there's too many trees, unsafe trees, not enough trees, something like that. And it's very much a blend, but it is very human interfacing type thing. And sometimes in forestry, you're not having to have that as an arborist. That's something that we work with frequently. We're dealing with, or we're working with clients and customers and stakeholders daily on a regular basis, and trying to be an advocate. We're that little that little orange guy that like stands on the stump and is like, I always try to describe myself. That's what we are as arborists. Is we're the Lorax and be able to interpret things and speak for trees, especially individual trees, but not at all to diminish the field of forestry. It's very important and critical, but there are kind of important differentiations on what we do.
Jason, you got anything to add to that?
No, I mean, he said it all, man. I mean, like you said, he was cooking. Just let him keep rolling, man.
All right, I got another question for y'all. So things to consider as a Parks and Rec director. I wrote down too many trees, not enough trees, unsafe trees. But I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, would the first thing you would want to do is, if you don't have one already, get a good tree inventory, the number of trees that you're responsible for, their location, the age of the tree and the species. What am I missing on a good tree inventory?
Condition of trees and individual assessments. So we just wrapped up one of the first large scale ones in San Antonio. It's an area of town that they're doing a master plan, and they said, hey, we want to have a really good idea of what's out here. And the good thing is there if every tree is healthy, that makes it a little bit more challenging. You've got unhealthy, you've got dead trees, you've got issues. If we're making improvements, sometimes it's better to locate those and make those improvements in areas where, hey, there's already no trees here. Yeah, there's a bunch of trees that we've got. I mean, there were 700 trees, I think, on this area that we just worked in, and it's 150 of them are dead, dying, in decline, and that we're probably pretty much I think there were over 50 trees that were just dead, like are ready to go and could fall over. And so that's something that we help with, that short-term planning of like, hey, we have maintenance issues that are critical. I've got a budget, because it's going to cost money, either your internal staff or you're contracting it out. Sometimes it's better to look at that holistically. Hey, I've gone through I worked at the city and state entities, and I've got to go through the bidding process. I got to go get 3 bids. Well, do I want to do 3 bids for every tree, or do I look at this as a batch? I look at this holistically and saying, hey, this is something we've got to plan for and take accountability for. So understanding that for budgeting and maintenance, but also understanding, hey, in the long range, what kind of plans and implementation improvements that we want to make in these areas? How do I guide that? And from a tree perspective, that's the feedback and recommendations we give, alongside architects, landscape architects, civil engineers. You've got to work with drainage and all these other improvements. So we work in maintenance for sure, but also park projects all throughout. And so we help with tree plantings and giveaways and all that kind of fun stuff too. But hey, what species? We have a species list here in San Antonio. What's the recommended list? Well, it's been out for 20 years. Are there things that we need to take off or add to this list? Because there's new species that that we've planted that have grown and did really well, and we had extreme furies. We've had extreme droughts that's killed off certain species. In we have a disease, it's called oak wilt. We've got something called emerald ash borer coming. There's all these large scale planting things. There's always threats to identify, and so can we change course earlier on and be able to be more protected and prepared for those threats?
All right, so this is what I got out of that. To create and fill in the blanks, but to create a good tree inventory for a city, you should, number one, count your trees that you're responsible for. You probably want to know the rough age of the tree, or maybe just like small, mature, I guess. Is there anything important about the age of the tree that you want to be looking for? Like if it's tiny, you maybe want to protect it if there's nothing around it, because dogs could pee on it and kill it. Or
I'd say more size than age, right? Size? I mean, I think that'd be a little bit easier to.
There we go.
So your diameter. Sorry.
What would be the categories, like thumb size, 5 inch, over 2 feet? Is there like small, medium, large? How would you define those?
You could look at it, say 6 inches or less. You could look at it as say small. Medium could be 8 to 12, and then 14 plus would be large, or something along those lines. You could vary depending on where you're at within the country too. I think. I mean, Justin could probably speak on that a little bit better, but I think that's what you would probably want to go off of.
And so I would say the 12 plus pretty much is established. You shouldn't be having to water it, stuff like that, if it's in a good location. Correct. Okay, but under 6 inches, you probably need to care for it, or there's a good chance it might die just for whatever. And so maybe under 6 inch needs care. Medium. Anything specific about a medium sized tree? Maybe just a pruning towards in that life cycle.
So usually when you're installing a tree, there's an establishment period, so you have to water. So we actually installed. I worked on a project. We did 1,000 trees in downtown in a hyper urban area. It was like the mayor at the time, he went on to be HUD secretary. He's around here in San Antonio still. Said, hey, we want to plant 1,000 trees downtown. We're doing a decade. I want to go plant trees. Well, there's no irrigation. There's no water. The soil conditions are not great once you cut open a sidewalk and see what's underneath there. And so establishing those, is going to be different for every area. If you can do it and put it on irrigation, it's automated. Hey, typically you get 6 months for every caliper inch of tree for establishment, and it just depends on where you're at. I'm in San Antonio, it's dry and arid. You may have to water those trees 2 to 3 years to get them fully established. Throw them in the ground in Houston and like kind of look at them. You can plant trees with no supplemental water. It rains a lot differently, and we're in 3.5 years into exceptional drought stage 4 water restrictions and all that. And so As those trees grow up, you have corrective pruning that you can do and care throughout, deer and antler rub and protection. So we put fencing to protection from vandalism. That happens a lot, or theft. We've actually had trees stolen off sites and things to consider. So, there's a lot of considerations as they grow and get larger and larger. But really just, mulch, water, some care, have somebody that knows what they're looking at, look at them. And protect them from the mowers is the biggest thing. So like anybody that's listening from the, I know Jason, me and Jason have definitely been on the end of a weed eater, zero turn or wherever you need us to be. The shredder, I have shredded a tree before. I'll admit I was mowing a roadside and totally took a tree down and was kind of looked back and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that was someone's tree that they had planted. And so, even as the best of intentioned folks, how do you raise awareness of that and put those protections in place? I even knew. Anyway, so we replanted a tree for that, that landowner back in the day. But anyway, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, tree care is a real thing. I'll give you one little example. We went on Florida vacation for about a week with the family. Right before I left, I planted 17 fruit trees. And, they're about $30, $45 a piece. But when we came back, our Great Dane decided to take every tree out and scatter them all around the yard. And that was
like rip them out of the ground, like bit them.
Tear them out the ground, drag them out.
They were just yeah.
And they were just the stuff you get in the little 5 gallon, whatever, 3.5 gallon. And so she decided to just drag them all over the yard. And the only 2 fruit trees that were left were the ones planted in front of the house that she couldn't get to.
Did they take back, or if they dry out more than a couple of days, usually that's
no, she like ripped all the leaves off of them. They were just nothing but sticks at that point.
Wow.
I'm sorry. That's a great example. Yeah, we have that. Yeah.
I would say if you mulch, don't volcano mulch. So there's a thing called volcano mulching, right? That you see around. I'm not saying our parks folks do it, but you see it a lot in the landscaping, right? Just in general. But it's really where you pile up mulch to literally look like a volcano. And it shouldn't be that way. We should have 2 to 4 inches at most 4 inches of mulch basically around the tree, right? But also staying away from the base of the tree by a few inches. And it doesn't mean that it has to be just barren grass, but the mulch doesn't need to be packed up and stacked up against that base of the tree. So we've seen a lot of that too, especially coming over here with Tree Man now. We're doing a lot of tree preservation work. And so it's interesting when we preach it all the time, and I've preached it for forever, but to be able to see it, we're actually doing root collar excavations where we blow out the soil around it. You can see the roots literally growing up around the base of the tree because of that. And so it's really detrimental to the tree. I mean, and folks, I think sometimes don't necessarily understand what's going on. They see it looks beautiful, but the end result can be very devastating.
Now is there a difference between what's going on at the tree? So the bark is different than the root, and one's okay to be in the dirt and the other one needs to be out of the dirt. Is that kind of what's going there at the ground level?
What'll happen to you is if you pile it up, the trunk itself and the upper root flare will send out what's called adventitious roots. There needs to be enough soil for the roots to be able to breathe, right? If you have it too compacted or you have too much fill on top, so if you go pile a bunch of dirt on top of a tree, it wants to live, right? Like just like you, hey, I'm trying to make it. So it's going to send roots out at this new soil level, right? If you pile a bunch of mulch, that mulch breaks down and basically becomes soil over time. Sends a bunch of new roots out. Well, what those roots will do is start spinning around, and it'll actually girdle the trunk of the tree, and it basically will choke off and suffocate the edge of the tree. You've got vascular action going up and down the tree. It basically chokes that off. And so you ever go see a tree, and you're planting a tree or a large tree, and half of it's dead, or there's something like that, or there's dieback or thinning in the tree. It's a soil and a root issue usually. And so we have tools as arborists to be able to kind of remediate those. But having somebody that looks at that and say, hey, we want to have healthy trees in the future. We spend all this time, planning this out, putting it in the ground, getting it established and taking care of it. And then if there's no proper maintenance on it, hey, you just, it was all for nothing. And so, hey, to get something to grow like this back here, it's going to take a long time. So if you think about the considerations of that, and that's what we do as consulting arborists is kind of raise awareness, looking, assessing, identifying, whatever you need, but also making recommendations and helping the folks that are in that role of making the decision. If I'm a director, superintendent, I'm a manager, urban forestry, you really, that's where our expertise comes into play, and saying, hey, we're here to help you make those decisions. And we like, Jason and I both, have, very diverse experience, working all throughout the state of Texas. So, seeing those and some of those examples, kind of anticipating, hey, what's this future condition? Where do we want to go? Where are we at right now? And where do we want to be? And helping folks get there. And so that's what our team, what we do, and kind of what we focus on, but also looking at how do we do that through, providing expertise and having good results.
Okay, so let's move on to tree care. So I guess we'll just start with the planting. Let's talk about picking the location. What are things to consider about the location? How big is this tree going to be? I mean, let's just start with the location selection as the first part of tree care. So
you want me to go for it?
I'll lay about try. I mean, I planted like 40,000 trees.
So many trees, right?
Yeah, I've planted. We did. So it depends. Location is really critical. And so, am I in a park? Am I in a street? Am I in an urban area? Am I in a reforestation area? So I've done like restoration plantings. So I worked on a project, led the tree planting for 30,000 seedlings. We had nurseries, and we established seedlings along it's called the Mission Reach Ecosystem Restoration Project. And so planted all those. Well, hey, there's no underground utilities to consider, or overhead utilities or anything. It's just a river basically. Well, the aspect of where you're at on the river, the upland side versus down on the toe in the margin, what they call the littoral zone, there's water down here. I can plant trees right along the edge of the water. I'll never have to water them because they will pull water up from the river. Something to consider. If I plant trees way up here on the you can't see my hand, but on the top of the slope here, hey, I'm gonna have to water those trees to establishment. And so something to consider is, water availability, with the species selection for what's going to thrive in that condition. And so I'm a very big like native plant proponent. There are introduced plants or non-native plants that you could put in that aren't invasive, but can thrive in certain conditions. And there's some conditions that aren't native, like in an urban area, all the soil has been it's a conglomerate of whatever subsoils are there. You've got to plant what works. And so overhead utilities, underground utilities, cars, speed of cars, and what other future conflicts and growth. Do I have road clearance? Do I have sidewalk clearance? Do I have bike clearance to be able to actually prune this tree up and maintain it? Is it going to fit? So planning for the mature size. Do I need to put giant sycamore or pecan trees 10 feet apart? Well, they don't touch right now, but give them 2 years and they're going to be, overcrowding. And so there are considerations that you can make throughout in kind of rules of thumb, I guess, that you can use for each of those street tree plantings. But I see it all the time. Hey, it's too dense, it's overplanted. And, you have to have some accountability for attrition and mortality over time. But hey, those trees are going to grow. And then if you want it to grow and live and thrive, that's the goal. Having 30 to 50 feet between these large shade trees, fill in small species in between, and consider that. So I've done a lot of that, and there's tons of considerations to make. But species selection, site selection are paramount when you're planting trees.
Species. Okay, so I got underground utilities, above ground utilities. We'll have to water the trees till establishment. What's establishment? That's that 12-inch size, pretty much, or maturity of the tree, whatever species it is.
Typically a couple of years. Yeah.
Yes.
2 to 3 years worth of supplemental watering, making sure that it's, probably cared for, if you will. That's typically what a proper establishment time frame is.
It
Okay.
depends on the size and species of the tree, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then I've got clearance considerations, whether it's cars, sidewalks, for the future, for a mature tree, distance between trees, and then choosing proper tree species.
Yeah, you don't want to plant something that's like drops fruit or is really messy over a sidewalk or something like, there's birds. And there's certain bird-friendly species. We love birds and we love having habitat, but that might not be something you want to plant like in a parking lot or right by the front door of a building or something like that. Just so we work with a large grocery retailer here in Texas, and their rule is I don't want any trees at all within 100 feet of the door. It's like, well, that's where we need the trees, but they're like, because they don't want birds in those specific areas. Same thing at airports. I worked with a lot of airport expansion in San Antonio. FAA has regulations on trees and birds and planes don't mix. And so those are, you can go way down a rabbit hole of those kind of considerations for site selection, but those are things that we think about as arborists and as urban forestry professionals on what's going to thrive here. Well, we don't maybe need to plant trees. Maybe there's native grasses or shrubs that would meet this and the intent of what we're trying to accomplish.
Or is there a thornless variety, right? Is there an evergreen? Like those are some things too, right? Like it's not planting a mesquite tree in a park because that's probably not going to go over too well.
Now, have y'all ever planted fruit trees like in a university that kids can just come and we were talking about that on one of the other shows where somebody had the idea where you just go plant like 50 orange trees and then just have that be open to the students as free food. Have y'all ever participated in anything like that or heard about anything like that?
There's a food forest here in San Antonio that's been planted, and that's kind of the whole intent. It's public land, and they have a local area where they're actually planting trees and they're planting fruit bearing anything, like you name it, anything, like it's not just vegetables and things like that and vining, it's trees. It's basically like a tree forest. I also saw something yesterday when I was scrolling through. This was kind of unhinged, and I don't know if y'all see this, but like this, there's a guy. I thought it was brilliant too. It's also brilliant. Sometimes the craziest ideas are like, oh, this is so cool. Calorie pears or Bradford pears are very invasive in other parts of the country. Not so much in Texas. We're lucky like that. But I saw him chopping the tree and then grafting fruit. So basically cutting the tree down and then actually grafting fruit bearing plants onto that, and basically saying, hey, this is an invasive species now. Boom, let me put a bunch of grafts on here. This is a new food forest. That's kind of brilliant to think about. Hey, I'm not managing a horrible invasive species now. I've converted this. So I thought, creative solutions like that, they kind of blow my mind. I'm like, man, I would have never thought about that. Just cut all the trees down. But I've seen that.
Do y'all know of a city or community that has a really good food forest program or something that's they would be proud of? Maybe get them on the show, or are y'all close to them or know of any by name?
I'd be happy to connect you with the folks here in San Antonio. They're the group that leads that's called Bare Branches Alliance. That's BEXAR. So Bare Branches. They're great. They are kind of like one of our local community forest advocate groups.
Mm-hmm. How big is this food forest that they have here? Or what are we talking about?
That's
1,000 trees, 1,000 orange trees, or any idea what the scale of this is? And is it just open to the public? It's just like public land. So if you see an orange, you can pick it, you can have it.
It is public land. I do think they manage it to some degree. I don't think it's just something you can kind of take, plant and come as you please. But I don't think there's any restrictions on anybody going in there if they needed to either. So I'm not as educated to speak on that, but I've definitely seen it. You can literally just drive by and see it. So it's good size. They have full-time staff maintaining and helping establish that, as well as other community. They have schools. It's called the Canopy program, that they're actually planting trees on schools. So I don't know if y'all have been to like a school or like these kids are out here playing. There's no trees. I feel like so many schools, they just like wipe everything out, and then like there's limited maintenance, and hey, we just mow and blow the grass, but there's no trees. And I think that's something I see in our area specifically, that they've taken a lot of ownership to try to address that. And so I see that that's an initiative I think that's really helpful. We need shade. These kids out here playing, it's hot.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to location selection. We got that taken care of. Clearance, distance between trees, choosing the proper species. So let's go about caring for the tree from planting to maturity. What does that look like?
A lot of time and maintenance. Is everybody ready for it? Right.
Yeah.
I think it's really, after establishment, it's really just it's continued maintenance, right? I mean, Justin kind of spoke on it a little bit earlier, but if you're planting a tree and it's young enough, you're able to structurally prune it, right, and start to train it to the way that you want it to be able to grow properly. And so what I mean by that is that, if you have, say, a certain species of tree that has a lot of intertwining, if you will, where the limbs are starting to cross a lot, you can start to eradicate those, right, and start to create these main stems, if you will, right, these what we call scaffolding branches, right, and ones that are going to be those permanent branches. And that's beneficial for the tree in the long run, because what that does is it helps reduce the amount of maintenance in at the end of the game, really, right? As the tree matures, it starts to be able to shed some of these other lighter things that you've already, and with the assistance of the maintenance team, be able to create this beautiful tree. So between just the pruning and the watering, really, that's pretty much all you really need to do, right? Continue monitoring the tree, making sure that there aren't any issues with it. And then mulch, right? Mulch is going to be one of the things that, as Justin had mentioned, that would be probably more of a reoccurring thing than anything else. But I mean, beyond that, I guess if the tree starts to start to show symptoms of anything, and that would obviously warrant further conversation with local arborist there for fertilization or some kind of tree care practices or something along those lines. So I don't know, Justin, is there anything I missed on that? Is there something you'd add?
A lot of it, you try to be preventative versus reactionary. Not every single tree, because it's not always practical, but most of your tree issues you can anticipate or you can understand, even if like extreme weather events. I worked in Houston at Memorial Park. We had a horrible drought back in the day in Houston in 2011, 2010, 2011. Unfortunately, that's when I left. But literally the summer of 2011 in Memorial Park, like the pine trees are just dying. And if you know that kind of species is dying, fall apart, hazard kind of issue. And so it was very much a cleanup operation, very, very quickly. How practical would it be to go water a forest of trees? And so that's something that I think is, hey, you can kind of anticipate that and you understand that. Well, we just had it, there's certain areas of Houston that have been hit by drought in the last couple of years. And it's, how do you learn from that and grow and have some kind of like either a mitigation plan or some way to anticipate that? And so, on a large scale environmental thing, how practical is that? Well, should we be planting those species if they're going to be so susceptible to drought? Should we change our planting mix, or should we adapt to that and planting that? Same thing with reactionary is, hey, if there is drought, what can we do on trees? Is this, hey, we just go cut down every dead tree? Can we leave some for habitat? Is there a risk? And how do we, can we exclude people from this area or move the picnic tables and benches? Can we just do a crown reduction and maybe the tree will be able to recover? Those are different considerations that we make. And so we try to do that for individual trees, but also at scale, and say, hey, usually that's when we get called as an arborist, when there's a problem. And it's already like too late for one tree, but it's like, hey, I can look at, all these other trees and try to make some recommendations. And so that's what we're always trying to do is improve the health of trees and take good care of those. But it's hard to get one from a seedling to a mature tree. I mean, that's 40 years. I planted all these trees in downtown. It's like, hey, I'm my grandkids are going to probably see some of these large.
Right.
My son's 4 right now, So it's like I got a long way to go, but I remember when I planted them, they were this tall, and now I come back and it was like, we planted those trees, 12 years ago, and getting to see that growth in just that short amount of time, it feels like it goes by us. We think, a year or a month or 10 years or, these are hundreds of years. Their timeline's a whole different thing. And so, the care that we do, what we try to do is put that in context and advocate and educate.
Okay, so I wanted to ask a few things about the watering schedule, mulching schedule, pruning schedule. So if you've got a tree that you planted, how often, and I know it depends a lot on species, so just kind of with broad strokes, if a tree needs watering, are you coming by weekly to water it during that first, so 52 visits a year for the first 2 years, so you need to be by this tree 100 times in 2 years? And then what are you dropping, 100 gallons on every tree?
So it totally depends on the tree and the species and the location. Like I said, I was planting trees with a dibble bar on the river, like in the mud. Boom! Hey, I got cypress trees and willow and all that stuff. So
Right.
hey, let them go. What are your goals? I also had a bunch of seedlings that we did mass plantings, where it's like I do initial watering, planting during the right time of the year, put some mulch on it, and then I had it's called dry water. It's DRIWATER. It's a product. They have another thing called the water box. I've got to remember what it's called, but it's like I'm gonna look this up. If you give me just Groasis water box, GROASIS. That's being demoed here in Texas. There are different ways that you can extend that that help with the establishment. Gator bags. I can water a tree. It's going to slowly percolate down into the tree. You can't do that with a little seedling. You kind of need that with a larger tree. But all those considerations, those are helping you. If there's no water, trees aren't going to establish. So you pick species that are going to be easily establishable, that are native, indigenous to an area, that are going to do well. Watering is usually, I water a lot initially. Planting during the right time of the year is really critical in Texas. That's fall and winter. You go plant right now. We already hit 100 degrees in South Texas already. So right now, there's mature trees that are already stressed out. So if you planted stuff, it's going to die if you're not taking good care of it. So right time of the year, constant irrigation, and so there's rules of establishment. So for every caliper inch of tree, 10 gallons per watering is kind of a rule. More the better. And remember, you're not watering the tree, so you're not just spraying the leaves down. You're watering the soil, and so that water actually needs to get into the root ball. So that's why things like gator bags and things are the most effective. That waters directly into the root ball of that tree, allows the supplement for it to establish. Those things in the nursery are getting watered every day, sometimes twice a day in a pot. In the ground, that dry soil around it's going to pull all that water out of the root ball. So you need to continue to supplement that, allow those first roots to happen, and then typically it's for every inch of caliper, it's every 6 months to establishment. So usually you're planting 15-gallon trees a year or so to get those established. So it just depends on the right time of the year. Usually 1 year minimum, I would say, for pretty much everything. But if you're planting larger material, 2-3 inch caliper, 30 or 45-gallon trees, it's 2 to 3 years. And so that's where, if you're looking at the size, what you're planting, I'm just giving you San Antonio. If there's folks from around the nation, they may just laugh at us. They're like, we don't have to water trees. What are you talking about? That's the environment.
Yes. Well, that's where I'm from in New Orleans. That if you put the tree in the ground, it's watered for the rest of its life.
Yes, we have. Yeah. You've got water.
Houston, man.
Big hole, there's water in there. So yeah, we have areas. There's an escarpment. It's called the Balcones Escarpment, Edwards Plateau. So on the top of that, in the northwest side of San Antonio, it is rock. There's rock in there. So you're digging holes. Literally, like my neighbors out here, we planted trees with a jackhammer. Like that's how we do it in this area of the world. Literally, no exaggeration. We plant trees with jackhammers, and there are specific ways you can plant in solid rock that's different. It's slope. There's no flat ground. Anyways, you go further into the east side of San Antonio or the south side, it changes. You get more of a clay soil versus more of a sandy soil the further south you go. So our area is a convergence of 5 different ecotypes and soil types. So it's very broad. So not to just overcomplicate it, but it's very specific on site selection, and we've learned a lot over the years.
Okay. And then let's see. Fertilization. Well, actually, how do you mulch a tree properly? So maybe just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I would say, again, 2 to 4 inches of mulch as far as thickness. And if you're able to, you'd want to mulch it, from the drip line towards the base of the tree. A lot of times that's not feasible, right? So it's, really whatever you can do. But you wouldn't, again, want to pile up the mulch right on top of the base of the tree. You want to keep it away from the base of the tree. I would say, I always tell people 6 inches, but a really light mulch over over those 6 inches is fine. I say light mulch, like less than an inch, like half an inch. Again, the idea is that you don't want 4 inches of mulch, 3 inches of mulch right at the base. So that's really it. And once, I would say, as time goes on, it starts to decompose a little bit. You can go in and hand till it if you would like. Kind of turn it. Sometimes it gets a little moldy in there, and you're able to till it and give it that freshness, and then throw an extra couple bags of mulch on top of it to be able to keep that 2 to 4 inch layer. And that's going to help reduce weeds, growing through that. It's going to help reduce any kind of mechanical damage that's going to be coming from mowers or weed eaters. So yeah.
How often, maybe is this like every year you come back and remulch? And when's a good
I would
time
look at it. Yeah, I would look at it every year just to see if it needs it. I mean, I would say every year, every other year at the most. I would say you'd be able to get away with it. But
is there a season for mulching? Like, do it in the winter, summer? Or does it really matter?
I think it's whenever your time allows, to be honest with you. I mean, I know all parks and recs are a little bit different, so I know their times are going to vary. So for us, it was always winter time.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add to that on mulch before I move on to fertilizer?
I always like to do it after, like in San Antonio, in our area, live oaks will drop all their leaves in March and April, and so you don't want to mulch and then you have a bunch of leaves on top of the mulch that you have to clean up. And so I always mulch kind of that April, May time frame. Is always kind of our local area. But if it's landscape, you're doing cutbacks. Usually I would do winter cutbacks, mulch at the same time, and you're kind of already there. So it just depends. It totally depends.
All right. Fertilization. And I can't remember, was it y'all that told me about some spike that actually holds the tree down? You hammer it in the ground, and then it also has a slow release. Is that y'all I heard that from?
Tree staking?
Yeah,
So
I think it might have been tree staking.
Are you talking about like there's the thing called like a platypus? It's like a root anchor that you can actually, it's like subsurface, and then you actually install the tree on top of it, and then you bury it. So all it does is it'll strap the tree down. I've seen products like that, but I haven't seen anything that like you can stake and kind of hammer in trees underground, like but that would be a very unique application. Depends on where you're doing it.
Yeah, I might have heard it from somewhere else. I thought I talked to somebody that had this guy in Texas that had this cool product that instead of having to stake and strap a tree, he had this thing that the stake was a fertilizer, like a tree stake, and it anchored the tree at the same time. Maybe I just dreamed this. It might be a good idea though. I don't know.
There you go.
Hey, let's run with it, man.
Yeah, there's one, I know what you're talking about. It's like rebar and you have to hammer it through, but I don't think it does any kind of
yeah, no, this was like a fertilizer. I could totally be dreaming. I've talked to so many people about trees as I'm trying to map out the topic for the Parks and Rec show. I'll have to dig into my notes. So okay, so let's fertilization. What are we looking at upon planting the tree, and then is there any considerations as it grows? Like the tree spikes that you put in the ground or anything?
I could talk all day. I was like, I don't want to hog all the airtime, but you know what I mean? Is I always try to supplement individual trees when they're planted. So we use something called the Agriform planting tablet. And so you can get like 7 gram or 21 grams. And so they will actually specify how do you install that. And so if you have the tree spikes, like you have to go hammer those in afterwards, it's basically the same stuff. What you can buy it is in a big box, and you just kind of, usually for like a 15 gallon, you put 2 to 3 in. kind of around the edge of the tree when you're planting it. Super easy, helps with supplement for that kind of initial fertilization. Thing is if you have the right species, you know, that are going to get established, fertilization isn't always necessary. Typically doesn't hurt. It's not going to hurt trees, and it can help if you have degraded soil conditions, but just mulching is really helpful. So it just depends on certain trees, you know, like, you know, you go plant a magnolia tree in New Orleans or Georgia or some of these areas where you have like kind of more of an acidic soil, get rainfall and things are happy. I assume things are happy. I don't know. You go plant a magnolia tree on the Edwards Plateau where I'm at in San Antonio. It's rock. It doesn't rain. It's high pH soil, so it's very alkaline. That, you know, you need to supplement those trees and supplement the soil. And so, you know, you'll see them get real spindly and nasty and pretty much die. And so that's not something I recommend to plant here, but hey, if you plant it, you're gonna have to water the heck out of it and supplement it. So on a parks world, usually my resources are constrained. I'm not, you know, unless there's a specimen tree in a specific area that I really need to take care of, that wouldn't be my recommendation. You know, sometimes you're just stuck with it. I got this, you know, it's got a little, you know, something on the base of it. It's a memorial tree or something. Hey, we better take good care of that. That's really sentimental to somebody, and let's put that care at least good enough. But I don't necessarily want to, you know, for the next guy, hey, if I'm only here for however long, once I retire or wherever I go, I don't want them to have to, you know, have to deal with that. So let's plan for that future condition.
All right. Well, we're at the 1 hour mark, and I've still got a whole laundry list of questions. So we're going to have to maybe do a second episode. Maybe we can get someone around the food forest as another potential guest. So sure. I'd love to go deep into that because I've actually heard from a few other cities of them kind of considering planting public fruit trees. So I think that's a great idea. So let's see. I think that was last thing. Yep. Oh, so I know y'all only really service the roughly Texas area. If someone is looking for someone like you in their area, what do they look for? They just look for a master arborist, or kind of, can you point to any research sources that they can maybe look for someone like you in their area?
Yeah, shout out. We have the American Society of Consulting Arborists. So that's the creme de la creme. That's the tip top of the folks that do this type of work, but they're all very highly specialized too. Some folks may not have that relevant Parks and Rec type of experience. Like Jason and I do. We were Parks and Rec, we were managers, Jason was director, and broke off and started, consulting on the outside. And so I think, to try to find that maybe challenging. Hey, we'll travel. Let us know. We'll, hey, how far are you? I've gone all over the place. So let us know. We'll be there. It ain't that far. For me to get to South Texas is 5 hours. So, hey, wherever. But there's
still in Texas.
And I'm still in Texas. Absolutely. So there's a website called treesaregood.com. They have a find an arborist tool, so you can enter in your area, I think your zip code, and it'll actually look up who's your arborist in your specific area, and it'll show you that person and all their credentials and their contact info. So people hit me up on that all the time and say, hey, Justin, I saw you're on this page, and hey, it's usually homeowners or resources. There's also, agriculture, extension service in your area. Like we have a Texas A&M University. They're a big advocate, and they have an AgriLife extension program. So each county has its own county agent, and they'll connect you with folks. There's a lot of resources. Shout out to Florida. University of Florida does tons of work. So like as an Aggie, I'm an A&M graduate. They're great. Anybody in Florida, U of F has got amazing resources, so shout out to them.
If there's anybody in Charleston, South Carolina, I bet you could get Justin over there practically for free.
Yeah, I want to go visit.
Well, there's also the ISA website, Justin. So International Society of Arboriculture. So check on that. They also have different chapters within ISA, so you could reach out to some of those chapters depending on where you're at within the country.
I can drop you the link right here in the. I don't know if I can do that, but there you go. Yeah.
Is that in the private chat?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was the bottom one.
That was it. Yeah, treesaregood.org. That's their ISA Find an Arborist tool. So that's the easy way to do it. You know, I always try to find, like, if you do like a next door type, or like your neighborhood, like a community Facebook group or something like that, you know, type up, and if you see somebody's name 5 or 10 times, that's usually who I would say is a good place to start. Depends on what you're looking for, but reputable folks, you know, that's what we work off primarily, is just referrals, right? If you think we did a good job, hey, that means more than anything. So thank you all so much. And, you know, we're very blessed to be able to have those, the folks that advocate for us, because we're out here advocating for the trees.
Yeah, I was trying to do some type of banner, but I think I just messed it up.
It's all good.
Let me see how I can
get
figure
the
it out.
idea, right?
You figure it out. Okay, well, we'll just have that StreamYard banner just sitting up there for a minute. Okay, well, guys, thank y'all so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. Thank y'all for sharing all your wisdom and expertise. I'd love to have y'all back on, especially if we can, because I got a ton more questions, so I can finish off understanding a little bit more about forestry, urban forestry, community forestry. And then I'd love to, if y'all can help me get in touch with whoever from San Antonio on that food forest, I think that would make a very interesting episode.
Oh, but, yeah. I'll follow up right now.
Sounds good.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much, man. This is great.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming on the show today. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Y'all take care.
Take care.
All right, that was a great show. Don't know how to get this ticker thing off. Let's see if I can figure that out. May just have to. Here we go. Hide. I did it. Okay, so that was Daily Parks and Rec show. The facilities maintenance. Another subset of facilities maintenance is urban forestry, aka community forestry, and those were two arborists. One of them was a certified arborist, former Park and Rec director. The other was Justin. Hold on, let me make sure I don't mess this up. Yeah, it was Justin and Jason. Justin was the guy with the beard. He is a certified master arborist, and so even if you listen to the show, you can also find out how you can become one of these if you happen to be working with trees, caring for trees. And then Jason was a former Park and Rec director for a couple of cities and a superintendent. So they both have Park and Rec backgrounds. So I think they would be good resources for you to call. But if not, they also, towards the end of the program, mentioned some other resources where you can find someone like them in your area when you're trying to figure out what to do with all these trees and how to plant more, how to care for them, how to deal with trees that are in trouble, that kind of stuff. So great episode. All right. I got to run because we've got another episode coming up here shortly that I got to prepare for. But this is Craig LeBlanc, the doorman, with the Daily Parks and Rec show, Facilities Maintenance, Urban Forestry Edition, signing off. Thank you guys for all the love and support. I will see y'all here shortly for the Leaders in Parks and Rec show. Thanks. Bye. Welcome to the Daily Parks and Rec show, where we highlight the essential work that keeps our parks and facilities thriving. From local ball fields to multi-use athletic complexes, field maintenance ensures every space is safe, ready, and welcoming for play and community events. Facility maintenance is the backbone of operational excellence, ensuring that recreation centers, playgrounds, and shared spaces are functional, clean, and built to last. Behind the scenes, equipment maintenance keeps vital tools and machinery in peak condition. At the core of future forward thinking is sustainability management, integrating green practices that reduce environmental impact and enhance long-term resource stewardship. Facilities maintenance is more than routine upkeep. It's strategic, essential, and foundational to building healthy and resilient communities. This is the Daily Parks and Rec show, honoring the professionals who keep our spaces running and our communities strong.